everybody, welcome back to day 3 of our Western States live interview show. You are listening to the Pillars Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Bowman, and today we're sharing another series of shorter but awesome interviews with some top athletes and interesting characters from this year's Western States 100. Today's guests in chronological order are Ragna DeBaats, Paul Lind, Mike McManus, the global head of sports marketing for Hoka, followed by 2019 women's champion Claire Gallagher, and we finish off with ultra legend Max King. And finally, at the end, we do some commentary, analysis, and prognostication about what we expect from this year's race and talk a little bit about the conditions that the runners will confront out on the Western States Trail. Of course, all these interviews are done with my co-host for the week, Corinne Malcolm. We've had so much fun doing this live interview show. We realized that yesterday we had some audio issues, but we are learning a lot, and we really appreciate everyone's understanding as we try and figure this all out. But it's been so fun. Again, as a reminder, please do tune in to the race day live stream all day tomorrow. Race day. Corinne and I will be on the microphones literally all day starting at 4:30 a.m. and we really hope you'll join us for all, some, or most of your Saturday. It's going to be a ton of fun. On with the show. Here is day 3 of the Western States live show from Olympic Valley, Friday, June 25th, starting with Spain's Ragna DeBaats. Okay, we are good. We are live. It is day 3 of Western States Live from Olympic Valley, California. It is the day before the Western States 100. We are all so excited. After a year off, we are back here for North America's most important race. I am here with my co-host for the week, Corinne Malcolm. Corinne, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. Happy to be here again.
Yes. And we are joined this morning by our first guest from Spain, Ragna DeBaats. Ragna, we'll get to you in just a second. I just want to say a couple of thank yous to our sponsors before we get started. Number one, Hoka, of course, the race's title sponsor, has pulled out all the stops to make our digital coverage of this year's race top notch. We are really trying to change the game of race coverage here in the sport of trail and ultra running. So thank you to Hoka for the support to make that possible. Thank you also to Buff, another great supporter of the Western States 100 and of ultra running in general, for making our coverage possible all week. Just a reminder, tomorrow, starting at 4:30 a.m., Corinne and myself will be having our coffees. We will be filled with enthusiasm, and we will be covering the race nonstop throughout the entire day. So if you're watching this on YouTube right now, make sure you subscribe to the Western States YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the action tomorrow. Finally, before we get started, I just wanted to say, we know we had a little bit of audio issues in yesterday's live stream. We apologize for that. We are learning. We are trying our best. We appreciate your understanding. We are learning, and we're getting better, so we appreciate your feedback, and we hope to do this a little bit better today. And also, we had some feedback that you wanted to ask questions during our interview show yesterday. I now have the chat up on my computer, so if you want to submit questions for Ragna and our other guests today, please do so in the YouTube chat, and I will do my best to pull some of those out and ask our guests to help make it a little bit more interactive. Okay, on to our conversation. Ragna, welcome. It's very nice to see you. You are from Spain. It is your first time here at the Western States 100. Is it your first time racing in North America? And how's your experience been so far?
Hello, good morning to everyone. I'm living in Spain, but I'm actually from the Netherlands. So that's one little correction. Yes, it's my first participation. It is actually my first real visit to North America, because I have been here a couple of times. In Montana, I raced there a couple of years ago, and Saranac Lake. But it was only just for racing, and this time I've been here like for a month to see a little bit more of the country, of some different states. And yes, it's the first time I'm running Western States.
We're so excited to have you here with us this year. And it's my understanding that not only is this your first 100-mile distance race, but you only found out about a month ago that you had a bib into the race. How has that been, making that kind of quick adjustment to be ready for this weekend?
Yes, it was just over a month ago, I think. But I have been wanting to participate in this race for many years, but it's not so easy to get into it. So I hadn't been lucky so far, and my chance was through Ultra Trail World Tour. And in the end, I became this bib, and the news, the message came through by email, and I read it, and I was like cleaning my eyes again, and I read it again, and I was like, is this really, really true? And I'm getting goosebumps now, because it was just like my dream to come here. And it was true. I wrote actually an email like, is this really what you wrote? And 5 minutes later, I had the answer, yes, I can confirm you have your bib. And I was just so happy.
What a beautiful story, and so well described. And I love the goosebumps. I mean, it's something that we all feel about this race as well. It's the most important race here in North America. Of course, you're from Europe and have raced a lot in Europe, and you've been the skyrunning world champion. Skyrunning, of course, races that are a lot shorter, more technical, more steep than the Western States course. I think this is your first 100-mile race as well. How are you thinking about your skill set as a skyrunning athlete transitioning to a flatter, faster course here at Western States?
Yeah, I guess it's quite a different race. I've actually done different types of races, not only skyrunning, and actually, I am naturally more of a fast runner than a sky runner, like a steep running. So for steep mountain races, I have to train a lot to get the strength in my legs. And naturally, it seems that it is just easier for me to run fast for a long time. So that is something I think which works in favor for me during this race. It's the longest distance, but not the longest time, or a similar time to other races I have run before. Last year, for example, I ran Montreux Trail Festival. It was a race of, I think, 115 kilometers, so not so long, but it was with 8,500 positive altitude meters. I don't know how that translates into feet, but that's a lot. And it took, I think, about 16 hours something to complete this race. I won it. So in times, I do have some kind of feeling of what it will be like to run for such a long time. But it won't be so much climbing and descending. It will be more runnable. Yeah. So it will be slightly different.
So I was talking to Ruth Croft, and she said that it was my understanding that your family has kind of been on a worldwide road trip project, getting to run in a bunch of different places. And it sounded like most recently you'd been in Costa Rica. Is that how, I mean, looking at this race being so hot this weekend, do you think getting to spend that time there will have prepared you well to be here running in the heat?
Yeah, I think definitely. I came from Europe, so in order to enter the States, we had to do a quarantine, and we did that in Costa Rica. That was over a month. That was like 6 weeks ago when we entered. I stayed there for 2 weeks, just enough to do the quarantine, to see some friends, and to train in the heat. We went to a hot part of the country and trained with the most hot and humid conditions possible. I think the combination of humidity and heat is even more difficult than this combination of, this heat, because it's dry and you feel like your clothes just still stay dry. In Costa Rica, you get completely wet and you really, really suffer from the heat. So I think definitely it makes your body stronger, and it is a good preparation for running in hot conditions.
So Ragna, you've been in the States for a little while. Have you been able to get out on the course at all since you've been here in California? And if so, what are your thoughts about the Western States Trail? And if you have any thoughts about the history and tradition about the race and your opportunity to run it this year, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so as you mentioned before, we are on a project which is called Rolling Mountains. The project is about traveling to the different continents of the world and running an ultra race on each continent. But it is about running, about the training, but also about the family life, about traveling. So I haven't only come to be here at the race because I wanted to travel around a little bit in North America in the mountainous areas. So we decided only to come here like 5 days before the race. And this meant that I wasn't able to scout a lot. So 2 days ago, I just went to have a look at the river to see what that will be like, because I heard so much about it. And I ran a little stretch there, only like 45 minutes, and I had another run another day on the course. But basically, I don't know the course. Personally, that is something I like as well. I like to know the finish, because sometimes mentally it can be really hard to run the last 10 or 20 miles. But I will be with my pacer, so that will hopefully help me. And otherwise, I think it's also really nice to actually not know the course, because you will get all sort of new impressions, and mentally that can make you feel really strong, I think. Yeah.
So where on this Rolling Mountains project are you headed after this?
Yeah, so it's a really, really nice project. The thing I didn't tell you about the project is that we make a documentary on each continent. So we started in 2019. When the COVID started, we started in Asia. Then we went to South America, did Central America, went to Costa Rica, did the self-isolation there, which is also a really nice video. And because we did it like in a very nomadic style, just a tent and just cooking on fire on the ground. We didn't have anything there. And then we went to Europe, filmed Europe, and raced there. And after that, we went to Africa, had a really, really exciting time there. And then we went back to Europe because we couldn't really go anywhere, and we were waiting for North America to be summer. So we wanted to be here in a good time of the year, and to be able to race. So then this is the 5th episode of our project, and afterwards we still have New Zealand, Australia, so Oceania, but it's impossible at the moment to go there, so we're just waiting. and then finally we want to go to the Antarctic as well. So that's something we have in mind for the next period of time. We can't really say when it will happen.
What an amazing adventure. It sounds like so much fun. And I think in our sport, people do love that human side of the sport as well. And you traveling with your family and having these amazing adventures, I think it's a great story. And we'll make sure to share that with our audience as well. Speaking of adventures, though, you've got a big adventure starting tomorrow, just around the corner from where we're starting here. Of course, Western States is the oldest 100-mile race in the world, 100-mile trail race. There's a lot of tradition. It's something that we're very proud of. Because of the coronavirus, there's not a lot of international runners in the field this year. On the women's side, we have yourself, Audrey Tanguay, Beth Pascal, Ruth Croft. I was just wondering if, based on your experience racing in Europe mostly, if this is going to be sort of a new crop of competitors that you're racing against maybe for the first time, especially because of your sky running background, and if so, how you're thinking about the competitive field on the women's side.
I think it's going to be a very competitive year. I think I've got very good other women to run with, and I think it will help us to run a good time as well, because we will give each other pressure. So that's a good thing, I think. And I'm very excited about it. I know Brittany because she's also traveled to Europe a lot, and she's done a lot of sky running races there.
This is Brittany Peterson, the
yes.
defending second place finisher. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm excited to see her again, because it's a long time I've seen her. And I know Ruth Croft, of course. We have done several races racing each other. So and apart from that, I think maybe the other runners I'm not so familiar with. So it will be a surprise. And it's a pleasure for me to be able to race with them.
So we know that you've run some races that are over the 100K distance and some that are very, very verty. But we're kind of coming to a new combination here where it's long, but it's fast and runnable. Was there anything, obviously you only found out maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago that you were going to be here. Was there time to change anything in your training? Did you feel like you needed to do anything specifically to prepare for this kind of shift in racing style?
Yes, when I heard I could participate, we trained the schedule a little bit, and we put in more, always like runnable runs. So not so much with the poles, but so no hiking, no walking, but the trainings were always like runnable. So I've been running like more athletically. And I've done a lot of fartlegs on flat and interval training. So slight difference, a little bit more speed than usual, and not so much strength.
Great. Well, Ragna, we're going to let you go in just a second. I just want to pull out a question from our live chat here from YouTube. Matthew asked about your heat training. We already talked about that. We had another question about how you decided where to go with this Rolling Mountains project. How did you decide the destinations that you and your family were going to travel to?
Okay, you mean in North America, I guess, or in general?
In general, I think.
In general, yeah. Well, actually, the course changed quite a lot because we made like a geographically logical route. So we would have gone from South America to Central America to North America. But and then back to Europe because of the coronavirus, we were forced to adjust our plans. I think everybody in these years has had to learn to be very adaptable, very adjustable, and in our case, it was certainly the case as well. We had to live from day to day and see from day to day where we could go, what we could do. For example. After Central America, we instead of going to North America, so which would have been last year in summer, we went back to Europe and ran in Europe. And then when we went to Africa, we went to Tanzania because it was the only COVID-free country, apparently. And we didn't actually know what we could do after climbing Kilimanjaro. We didn't know what we would be racing, what we would be doing in Africa. And from Tanzania, we saw then we could go into Kenya. So we did a 24-hour drive to get into Kenya, which was quite complicated, getting over the border and everything. And then we were there and we were literally looking where can we race? Because we need a race on each episode. And suddenly we saw that South Africa had opened the borders and they had been closed for in lockdown, very extreme lockdown for nearly a year. And so as soon as they opened, we bought a ticket and flew into South Africa, and we were able to race 4 races there and had a really, really good experience with the community there. So it's been very much living day by day. And after Africa, we went back, and then but then we planned. We kept an eye out on North America all the time, and we saw that everything seemed very stable. That the vaccinations were going really well, and so we were pretty confident that we could come here, and so now we're here. And the states we wanted to visit were, of course, the states we heard a lot about, which were Utah, Colorado, California in first instance. And as we were traveling, we also went into Nevada and Arizona. And it's been an absolute amazing experience. You have such a beautiful country and such friendly people.
Well, thank you so much. We're really glad that you think that. And we're really happy to have you here representing Europe, representing Spain, representing the Netherlands. And we wish you nothing but the best tomorrow in your first 100-mile race here at Western States. Thank you so much for sitting down with us. Round of applause for Ragna de Botts, please.
Thank you very much. I can't be more pleased to be here.
Great. Thank you so much, Ragna. We'll be back in just a minute with Paul Lind. Okay, we are back. Welcome to our interview with Paul Lind from Idaho. Paul, we're really appreciative of you being here. I just want to remind those who are watching on YouTube that we do have a chat function going on live. I have it up in front of me, and we'd love to pull some questions out of that chat to ask our guests today. So if you do have a question for Paul or others, please don't be shy. Type those questions in, and we'll make sure to ask them. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. You have such an interesting story. I think most of our conversations have been with athletes. We talked to also Diana Fitzpatrick, the president of the board, and Craig Thornley, the race director, yesterday. You have a much different story, so I just wanted to start allowing you to introduce yourself to the audience, why you have such a special connection to this race, and why this year is so special for you specifically.
Well, I'm not sure I'm that special, but I feel pretty special with you young guns up here wanting to chat. But yeah, the family history goes back to before the Western States. My father was the doctor for the horseback riders. And in 1974, I was 7 years old, and I was with him. There was no hotel here. There was nothing but a field and a little ski resort. And the horses started over there. And there was this crazy lumberjack named Gordy Ainsley that was going to run it that year. And I, of course, was more interested in the horses than him, but my dad found that to be a feat of unimaginable endurance at that time. And 23 hours and 40-odd minutes later, Gordy finished with the horses in Auburn. And 2 years later, or 3 years later in '77, was the first Western States, if you've seen the black and white pictures. My brother and I were there, and Gordy was there. He wasn't running that year. And Wendell Roby started the race with his pistol. And they didn't start the race with guns up till that point. That's a bad thing for horses when you start a race with a gun. And after that year, Dad had his 20-gauge shotgun. He was an Iowa farm boy, and he started it every year since with that and was the medical director for 30-odd years. And so my brother and I have been along the whole time for the last 47 years. Transitioned into, I've run it a couple times, and I now coach professionally, and we have a few runners in this year. One special one who happens to be my son. My dad passed away in 2016, and so we've been handling the shotgun ever since, and it'll be a pretty big thrill to have Cody next to me tomorrow. Of course, Brittany Peterson will be right there. I coach her. And this young lady, Emily Hoggett, all three on the start line. So we have yet to figure out how I'm going to get everywhere, but we will see.
I was going to say, Western States means so much to you. And I coach as well, and I have 4 athletes in the race, and I have teammates in the race. And emotionally, I am going to be all over the place, and none of them are related to me. How are you, I mean, maybe you don't know yet, besides being blown away with how amazing the day is, how are you going to divide your energy up tomorrow to make it from firing the shotgun to being on that track in Auburn yourself?
Yeah, I have gone over my head. I am not going to cry at the start line. I genuinely have trouble with that. I'm not going to cry.
Same.
We'll see. But what a big thrill. I mean, I wish my dad was around to watch his grandson run. That'll be a really neat thing. As far as with the athletes, I don't coach a ton by choice. I'm very close to my athletes. I do their long training runs with them. I go to all the races around the world, and this one being so special, we've devised a plan. I'll see him at Robinson. I'll see him at Michigan. I'm going to bypass Forest Hill and go to the river. And by then, something in the plan will have completely blown up, and we'll have to improvise. So hopefully it'll blow up in the right direction.
Absolutely. Man, it is so fun to hear about the history of the race, and it's so cool that we now have a third generation of Lyns here at Western States. Again, your son Cody is going to be racing this year. He earned his golden ticket at the Bandera 100K. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to sort of gush about your son and just speak about how special it is for you, for another generation of Lyns to be participating at the Western States 100, since it goes all the way back to the beginning with you guys.
I think what means the most isn't that we're in Western States. It's the journey that it took to get here. I always thought that the training and the effort to get to this point was far more enjoyable and fun than the actual race ever was. And nowadays, I think if a person is running Western States to put a buckle on and make an Instagram post, you've missed the point of why you're here in Olympic Valley. It's to honor the tradition and to be on the most hallowed trail, I will say, the world. The Europeans won't like that, but I really don't care. I think this is the most hallowed trail in the world. And for Cody to be on there, I don't think it can get more special than the first time doing it. My first time I have runners go, and Cody too, we specifically don't let them see the high country. I think the high country is so special to go through Granite Chief, to get to Robinson Flat, and it goes by so quickly that one needs to just enjoy that. And then from Robinson Flat, everybody knows every rock, every pebble, up, down, creek, bridge, everything else.
So not to give away any trade secrets, but we've got a lot of people, watching online who might be racing this weekend. We've got people here in the audience who might be racing this weekend. If you had to give them one piece of advice from all your years here at the race, knowing that we were going into a hot year this weekend, what's your one piece of advice that they can carry with them from the start line here this week?
Well, I would love all the elites, except for Cody, Brittany, and Emily, to go out as fast as possible and run to Robinson Flat in 4 hours. But honestly, everybody is familiar with hydrating. That's no secret anymore. Everybody's familiar with staying cool. It's to save your quads. Because if you don't have quads, you cannot run from Green Gate to the finish. That's for the faster runners. My dad had a piece of advice for the mortal crowd like myself, the 24-hour, the 26, the 28-hour runners. And his advice was, walk early and often before it's the only thing you can do. And I think that goes a long ways.
It's great advice. So looking back 2 years at the 2019 race, where Brittany Peterson, one of your athletes, finished second place in one of the most amazing battles of all time with Claire Gallagher. And looking at sort of where she is now, coming in as a second place finisher, clearly is one of the contenders in the race. Is there anything specific that you guys did to help her be a little bit more prepared for that competitive dynamic that might occur again at the end of the race?
Absolutely. Next question.
It's a secret, I guess, huh?
No, Brittany, they're all ready to go. We do not talk about winning or high placing. That is something, I treat Western States a lot like a sailor on the ocean. The ocean will dictate where you go and how you get to sail. Western States tomorrow will dictate what you need to do and how fast and how well you're going to run. You can be as prepared as you want. It's 100 miles. It's somewhere between 14 and 30 hours. The body can turn on you. So I think this is the number one asset everybody has. And if you listen to that and push with this, we'll see you in Auburn.
That's amazing. So we've mentioned Cody, we've mentioned Brittany. You've got one more elite in the field this weekend, and Emily, who's sitting in the audience here. So we're going to kind
teammate.
of my teammate, Emily Hoggett. So she's sitting in the audience watching this right now. So I got to watch her earn her golden ticket at Canyons, which was phenomenal. I think I was in tears volunteering at the finish line. For you as a coach to have an athlete be so hungry for this race that they did not do one golden ticket race. They did not do two golden ticket races. They did all three golden ticket races trying to get their entry here. What does it mean as a coach, even though maybe you have your own personal feelings about that, but what does it mean to see her get to start this weekend?
First of all, we will not do that again. We will go after one. 300 Ks is not a coach's dream come true for an athlete. But yes, she was ready for all three and just put her heart into it and wanted it so bad. And to finally get that last golden ticket at Canyons was pretty special.
There were many, many tears shed and huge hugs given at that finish line. So this weekend, I think, will be especially special for everyone involved.
I agree, 100%.
I want to ask a question about the medical research because it is something that's so important to the Western States 100. We talked to Diana Fitzpatrick, the president of the board, yesterday, and she said there's 3 things that they focus on: putting on a great race, doing medical research, and doing trail work. So medical research is one of the core pillars that the Western States 100 focuses on every year. Your father was the medical director for 30 years. Do you have any perspectives to share from his experience and your experience with the race about the medical research, things that have come about because of it that otherwise wouldn't have?
Absolutely. I mean, the development of electrolyte and supplements and foods, we didn't have that back in the day. People were taking salt tabs and stashing water. But of all the medical research, I think what he learned is running 100 miles is not necessarily good for the human body. We all agreed that. You both have run.
We agree to that statement.
It is not something that is generally good to do to yourself. And that being said, my dad always liked people to respect the human body. You only have so many 100-mile races you can do. You only have so many 100K races you can do. Treat your body like it is the marvelous machine that was handed to you, and take care of it. Yes, people can do 100-mile races. Do I think that's wise? No. I'm a fan of 100-mile race a year, 2 if my athletes really twist my arm. But you've got to be careful and take care of yourself, because you two are in your 30s, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you got the gray.
Is that right, Corinne? Sorry.
There's grays under there too.
Lots of them.
We both have
I
gray.
would tell you what I like to tell my athletes. I would like to see you two enjoying running long distances when you're 50 and 60 years old with good knees and still competitive and still putting a bib on and scaring some youngsters out there.
We would love nothing more.
Amen. Amen. So we, of course, want to take a question from the chat here, and it's actually something that I thought would be interesting to hear from you as well, and that is, I mean, Chris Andrews asks, the biggest advancements in ultra, and especially Western States, since the race's conception, or just generally any interesting memories that you have that you want to share from the early days?
So I think one of the biggest will be how you carry your water. Everybody is used to running with vests now and water. That didn't come along for a long time. There was handheld bottles, and there was the infamous Boda belt. And if nobody remembers that, it was a belt you filled with water and you wrapped it around, and some people would run 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 of them, the Boda belt. That was an absolute disaster and went away quickly. The drinks, the electrolyte and nutrition drinks, Tailwind and Roctane and the things that come along with it, I think are a huge asset if you use them correctly nowadays.
So I'm just pulling something else up that I thought was really interesting when I was sort of looking into your story. I think you ran the Western States 100 in 1986, right? So you were a young man in those years, and then you ran it again in 2015. So what is that? That's a difference in 29 years between your two finishes. Talk about your experiences both as a young man and as a little bit more mature masters athlete in 2015.
Careful. In 1986, I was 18. I had been around it my whole life. I worked at Fleet Feet in Roseville at the time. I had Nancy March and Tim Tweetmeyer and Herb Tanimoto all training me for the race, doing these crazy runs. I was the kid. It was a great experience. Western States was so brutal on me that it took 29 years to recover before I ran it again. The special thing about 2015 was that was the last year my dad was around. That was the final year that he started with the shotgun. And
that's so special.
It's amazing. I have goosebumps right now. This is now 2 for 2 goosebumps into this morning's interviews. Tomorrow, you're going to be shooting the gun off one more time. Maybe just give us a quick...
So here's the shell.
He brought the bullet,
There's
folks.
the shell that's going off.
Amazing.
My dad always wrote WS 100 miler and wrote the date on it. And so we did that this week. We also do one test fire. And Cody does the test fire of the gun. He did that in Idaho this week, and we are ready to rock, and we will be very safe. Don't worry.
Well, Paul, this has been one of my favorites so far. What a freaking awesome story. An amazing 3 generations of Lyns all connected to this race. We wish you nothing but the best tomorrow. Try not to cry at the start. Good luck chasing your son, Cody, around along with your athletes, Emily and Brittany. We will see you at the start line tomorrow at 5 a.m.
Well, I have one more bit of coaching advice just for you two.
Okay.
Because I believe, if I'm correct, aren't you in Hard Rock this year?
I am. Yes, sir.
Aren't you coming my direction and running I'm Tough this year?
I am.
Stand by. This is the... Can you hold on?
Yes, sir.
The backpack is coming out.
So you ask my one bit of advice to be successful in 100-mile races. I can guarantee this will make you successful. I can also guarantee you will not want to carry it with you. You will not want to hold it, but you will want it every chance you get during your races.
I don't know what to do right now.
There is nobody, no runner that doesn't like cowbells out on the course. If you use cowbells in Hard Rock and in I'm Tough, in my state of Idaho, and everybody out there sees these during the race, we're going to have a 99% finish rate tomorrow. Thanks, guys.
More
Thank
cowbell.
you.
Big round of applause for Paul Lind. We'll be back in just a second with Hoka's Mike McManus. Okay, we are back. 2021 Western States 100. We are here with Mike McManus, the head of sports marketing at Hoka. Mike, welcome to the show. I just want to make sure to remind everybody, if you do have questions for Mike and our other guests, please do type them in the chat. If you have a question from the audience too, just raise your hand and we'll get to you as well. Mike, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. Maybe start by just introducing yourself to the audience, what your role is at Hoka and why this race is so important to the brand.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dylan. And let me just say, it's electric to be out and see people so close that we've all been doing Teams and Zoom and seeing this race finally happen again. And we've been waiting now almost 2 years to be a part of this. But back to your question, I direct sports marketing for Hoka One One, and that means more or less, look after our athletes and events, and of course. If you're not familiar with Hoka, our genesis is this world. It's the ultra trail world. It was founded by 2 very smart, much smarter than me, gentlemen. And, it was born in the Alps in France to try and figure out how to, get up and down the mountains in the Alps and survive, especially as everyone knows, in terms of quadriceps, hips, all those things that take on a lot of pounding after mile and miles. So that's the birth of Hoka. So, Western States fits perfectly in with our brand.
So we've obviously seen Hoka's list of athletes that are racing this weekend. You've got some very established names, but you also have some young guns coming up in the likes of like Aaron Clark kind of transitioning to the trail. What does it mean to you to have this kind of, stable of athletes here towing the line this weekend going for the win?
Wow. Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier because just thinking about our athletes, and we probably have the best mix and most competitive group we ever have on both the men's and women's side. And we have some veterans that have done this many times, and Magdalena has won the race, Jim has won the race, Casey has won the race, and then we have some that are experienced but very new. Tim Tollefson, one of those athletes that I think this a lot of times could be his home course. I don't want to jinx him. As one example, that's right. And then, some newbies like Hayden Hawks or even Aaron Clark. And Aaron is so interesting, such a badass. She was actually, of course, a very competitive athlete in college, All-American at Colorado, went to NAZ Elite trying to, cut her teeth on the track and was absolutely injured the entire time. And struggled and has ended up, of course, relocating to Missoula and finding the trails and finding new life. And, I think one of the most exciting things about the Ultra Trail World to us is the energy and the push that all these athletes are moving towards this category, this sport. It doesn't have to be 100 miles, but the trail world is alive and well, and I think I think our athletes are a great example because they come from all forms. Some are pure trail runners, but a lot of them are coming from the track, and we have some very new runners to this race. So, we're super excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm personally super excited to watch Erin Clark run this weekend. It'll be fun to follow her story throughout the course of the day tomorrow.
So sticking on the subject of athletes, Corinne and I actually were talking about this the other day, that we inadvertently invited a ton of Hoka athletes to our show because we just went through, who are the most interesting, who are the most competitive, who are, some of the people who are the most liked and well-respected in the sport. And yeah, like I said, you guys have done an amazing job at sort of recruiting and identifying great, talented athletes. So as the head of sports marketing, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about the process that you guys go through to identify these athletes, what you look for both in their talent and in their personality to make them a good fit with the brand.
Wow. Yeah, pressure on me, I suppose, to make things happen, or our group, certainly our team. But I think, as I just mentioned, in the sport, there's a continued evolution of the sport, and you do have some amazing, trail athletes that are pure trail athletes that come to it from a different, Audrey Tanguy, who's here from France. She certainly doesn't have a track background, let's say like Camille Herron or Jim Walmsley or Hayden Hawks. But she is. I think she's going to do quite well, and I think it's our job and our opportunity to find those athletes that there is a physical ability, no doubt, and I think you're seeing athletes, of course, like Jim's a great example of that, who has made that transition from being a very good collegiate runner to figuring out ultras, figuring out even this distance, at least at Western States, and having a couple really good goes at it. But there's that physical ability, but I also think there's the ability that you need to manage yourself throughout the race, understand the strengths and weaknesses that you have, and I think there's a talent to that. And just being a good track athlete, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to figure that out. And I think that's one of the unique things that that this environment brings out is, sure, a fast athlete might have an advantage, you would think, but then there's so many other things that go into the roller coaster of emotions, knowing your body, having to solve problems. And, you see it with some of the best athletes in the world, Jim included. Camille, I think, is a great example that's taken a couple swings here. And I think she's also going to have a great race, but she hasn't so far at Western, and she's still trying to figure out this beast that is Western State. So for us, it's finding those athletes that we think are going to, be pretty good at solving problems. And of course, the 100-mile distance has become, I think, iconic within the sport. And we hear that from all of our athletes, that many of them will start out at 50K and 100K, and they quickly realize that, the 100-mile distance across the board is sort of the statement distance, and it's the equalizer all the way around. So, that's our opportunity. So we try and find those athletes that fit in and we think are going to be great ambassadors, but also, pretty good at this.
So I'm really curious. Obviously, you've been around the running industry for quite some time, but now with this kind of stable of trail and ultra athletes, road ultras as well, what, if anything, have you learned about running from trail and ultra, that maybe wasn't on, the top of your mind coming into kind of taking on this set of athletes?
I think we're still learning. I think a couple things that I've learned since joining Hoka, which was in 2016, and really getting to know some of the athletes, is not trying to force things in a race. You see it at Western States quite a bit. Is instead of trying to force initiatives, I think Jim's a great example. This is his first two swings, especially I think year two. Year one, maybe he would have still broken the course record if he just went the wrong or the correct route. That didn't happen. So course knowledge is also important. But second year, forcing, in a very difficult year, and he really imploded before he got to the Rucky Chucky. But I would say, allowing the course to come to you, not forcing it, and understanding the give and take that you're going to have, being at peace with that. I think another thing, and maybe even more apparent this year, is taking time out just to appreciate where you are. I've had that, especially from people like Casey Lichtig, getting to the top of escarpment and maybe celebrating with some of the other athletes. Like, wow, this is pretty darn cool. And I think this year more than ever, because we're coming off a pandemic, it's celebrating the sport. And that's one of the most cool things that I think continues to make the sport so unique that I have learned from an early age. My father ran Western States in 1981 and 1982. So I've been a part of this community, but the celebration factor, the embracing every athlete that's out there, understanding every athlete's continuing to try and maximize their own potential. I don't think that's changed, but sure, this sport continues to evolve, and I think with nutrition, with training, with all the new races coming in, it's going to continue to evolve.
You described Casey Lichtig and Magda's hug at the top of the mountain a couple of years ago, and you gave me goosebumps. So we're 3 for 3 on goosebumps in this morning's interviews. You also mentioned Jim trying to force things back in 2016, ultimately taking a couple of times to figure it out. He is now the 2-time champion course record holder. In 2019, I'm sure you were watching when he won and set the course record again. Jared Hazen, one of your other athletes, finished second in the second fastest time in history. Maybe a little retrospective on how it felt watching those guys go 1-2 in 2019.
Well, of course, it felt great. But the maybe the bigger story, Dylan, is that I was crewing for Jared that year, and that wasn't my initial plan when I arrived at Squaw Valley. But I asked our athletes, all our team asked the athletes, "Can we help you?" And Jared lost one of his helpers, and so I met him at Robinson Flat, and of course Jim came in and looked great, took his time, 30-mile mark. Jared came in, I thought he looked fine, and the night before, he laid out all of his gels and bottles and told me exactly what he needed at the first checkpoint. So of course I laid all those things out and was waiting patiently for him. He came in, I thought he looked great, and then he took everything that he wasn't supposed to. It was the different color drink. It was, instead of gels, it was waffles. And he was very efficient. So Jim took his time at Robinson Flat, and I want to say maybe, 3-4 minutes. Jared was in and out in a minute. He was so efficient, and it scared the crap out of me. I was so nervous, and my wife Laura was with me, and as we drove to Michigan Bluff, I told her, I said, wow, he just took everything he said he was not going to. He said, make sure I leave with this, this, and this, and he didn't leave with any of that stuff. And of course, trying to follow the runners is not always that easy, especially as you go through that next section. And so I was so elated when he actually showed up at Michigan Bluff. And again, he was so efficient. Jared was so efficient. There was no time to talk to him, but again, I laid out all of his stuff, had no idea what he was going to take, but he got his stuff. And of course I followed up only after the race. And yeah, he said, he had really awful stomach issues the entire first 30 miles, made several pit stops along the route, and his stomach was sour by the time he saw us for the first time. So of course, again, thinking on the fly, thinking through problems, but it really scared just scared me completely. But okay, it ended up pretty well for Jared and Jim. He had an amazing day. So we'll see if he can have another one of those days. But how many times do you get somebody like Jared breaking the course record and finishing second?
So switching gears a little bit here now, since you were here when your father ran the race back in the 80s, early 80s, and now we're sitting here in 2021. Hoka obviously has a huge, role in us bringing the sport into the modern era, I feel like, in the U.S. this weekend with the live media coverage. What does it mean to you to kind of be a crucial factor in that? And then where do you see, us continuing to push the sport forward? How do you think that we'll be involved in making that happen?
We're super proud being at Hoka to be a part of this race. As I mentioned, this is our genesis. This is where the brand comes from. And, Western to Hoka and Western, to me personally, has always been the most iconic 100-mile trail race in the world every year. And I did have the opportunity to grow up in that environment. Let's say it was a little bit easier to qualify when my father did it. And the years that he ran, there wasn't a California Loop that came in afterwards. They weren't exactly correct on or accurate, but he ran 26 hours the first year and 23 the second year, and got his silver belt buckle. And I was a part of the community with Ruth Anderson and of course Ann Trayson, and growing up in that Oakland, Berkeley area, ultra running was a big part of that. Dick Collins, another one that, again, just perennial ultra athletes. Where do we see this event going? I would tell you for Hoka, it's very important to make sure we're paying homage to this race, and certainly not overpowering or overshadowing the iconic Western States. It's, I would say, to put a nice accent on this race. One of our goals certainly is to help bring coverage, like we're doing today, like you're doing, like during race, to a much higher level. So, we really want anybody around the world to be able to follow the race for years to come and follow all the amazing stories, because right now, there are 379 amazing stories that are happening, and we certainly want everybody in the world to be able to gravitate, follow that event. So that's one of our big goals with the race, to help Western States make sure that it's really able to be broadcast, communicated, and just show off, what is, in our humble opinion, the most iconic 100-mile trail race ever.
So well said. And just on behalf of Corinne and myself and the other rabid ultra running fans worldwide, we really do thank you and Hoka for making that investment. It's something that our sport really needs, and we are very happy and proud that we can help contribute to that as well. So thank you for helping to support the live coverage this year on behalf of ultra fans worldwide. I know that inclusivity is also very important to the Hoka brand. I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about your guys' philosophy around that and why it's so important.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, ultra running is interesting that it's still, if we're being honest, it's still a male, driven sport.